Is it actually worth it to grow a garden? What we're referring to today is inflation. So, Batavia, what do you think right off the bat before we get started? Do you think we're actually saving money by gardening?
Yes.
Really?
Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, okay, so let's go a little bit deeper. Do you think it's easy to save money by gardening?
I'm not sure. So I was doing this thing just now where in the opening of the episode I didn't want to give a classic Batavia if this then that then this and that
Right.
answer. So in my attempt to be very direct, which I do believe the answer is yes, you can save money gardening. It's all of the kind of conditions and caveats around it that really is what I'm looking to talk about.
Yeah,
So there's that.
there's a lot to it. So I just wanted to get an opinion. So I believe that yes, you can save by gardening, and I do believe that it is hard to meet that goal. I think it's almost, and I don't think it's unachievable by any stretch of the imagination, but I absolutely think in terms of like how easy is it to grow your own food for a whole year, or a high percentage of your food. I think it's more difficult to learn how to come out on top, but once you get it, I think you can prospect financially from it. So that's my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
So I love this topic, but I also hate this
I
topic
know.
because when you think like I really want to kind of sit down with a drink and just say, beloved, it's not just about saving money, right? But this is what we're here to talk about today. And I think it's super hard to wrap your brain around. Yes, you can save money by gardening because I'm going to say the majority of people are not only consuming things from their garden,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's like how much do you save from the one store that you shop at compared to the 3 total that you shop at,
Right?
right? Like that's one of these stores is your own garden, right? So what's your kind of input, what's your investment, and then what's your savings and how are you managing that? How are you tracking that? Knowing that you're still going to 2 other stores and spending money there. Like that piece, I think you have to be really committed to the entire process to really eke out a solid yes. Yes, I am saving.
Yeah. How about this? Let's do this because I can feel that this is going to roll pretty hard. So, um let me do this and let's get started. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever it is for you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Backyard Gardens podcast. I am your host, Ben, and I am with Batavia. Let's go with the bold today. Say hi.
Say hi.
There it is. So, we are here to help you today. Typically, what we do is we do like tutorial type stuff, and there's going to be that mixed in here, but this is a discussion because I think it's time for us to really analyze this. Now, if you want to support the show, you may do so by becoming a patron, a subscriber, get an extra episode every month. Come see us on YouTube. And what else? Buy some seeds from us. There you go. I forgot that one. That's the most important one.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Apologies for the bell-less episode from last week. So let me give something a try here. Hold your
Please,
horses,
by
guys
all
and
means.
gals. Like when we talk about the work that you and I do, specifically on this podcast platform, and then if you look at our individual content, Sandy Bottom Homestead and Be Better Garden, everywhere you look, like we want to help people. We want to help people garden. We want to help people grow. We want to help people maximize what they're growing. We want to help. We want to actually encourage people that may not be doing this to do it, right? And I always feel like the argument that we end up having, the collective around does it save you money is, and if the answer is not immediately yes or very clearly yes, then it's not worth doing. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's the hang up that I get wrapped around. There are some people that are looking at this and saying, if it doesn't make financial sense for me, meaning if I'm not saving money, if I can get my food elsewhere and pay less, then that's what I'm gonna do. And I get that, and I can respect that. Like, this episode may not be for you. I'm gonna say stick around for a little bit, at least have a couple of sips of coffee, but this episode may not be for you, and that's okay,
Well,
right?
I think once we get in a little bit deeper, you'll start to peel back. And once we peel back the onion, we start to get through the layers. There's a lot in here that is for everybody that I think we can all benefit because, like so much in this world, it's a complicated subject. Um, there's a whole lot of benefits to things, and then there's a whole lot of disadvantages to other things, and each thing it's affected in different ways. So, Batavia opened up and said like it's not all about saving money for her. Um, I hope she wasn't speaking for me because for me, it wasn't originally. It was all about getting healthy food, access to different foods that I couldn't get, stuff like that. Hobby, of course. But in the past 4 years, it's gotten a lot more about money. Um, you know, it's not a secret. And look, this isn't a political show. We don't get into politics on this show. I don't give a crap who you follow or what you do. The bottom line is no matter what, inflation is running rampant and our food is dramatically tested right now. It's
Yeah.
it's 100% the problem is day-to-day cost. I mean, yeah, look, I just had to buy new appliance. Like it sucks, dude. All of my appliances in my house literally died within like a month. So we had to buy all new appliances. But and that hurt really bad. So please subscribe. Please. I'm begging you. No.
Brother,
It really
uh,
hurt. But the thing is that's a one time every 10-year purchase, right? But when you go buy a head of lettuce, that's an every day, every week, something like that. And that's where those costs really start to add up. Um, so it's one of those things. So as the years have progressed, I've gotten more and more interested in saving money. And I've had to, in turn around and really look at my garden and say, is this doing the trick? I mean, I want everybody to remember as we get into this conversation is I'm a guy who literally put in $398.56 into a drip system in his garden. And at the time, I was definitely looking into the price effects of my garden and how profitable, quote unquote, the garden is.
so I think you were trying to convince the people that I said go ahead and click away from this episode to stay.
No.
And it's normally the reverse of things. And so I'm double downing on like this is nuanced and you need to be able to have ears to hear if you're going to get something out of this episode,
Yeah.
right? And so there's an argument to be made that you may have clicked on it, and because you clicked on it, you have ears to hear, and that's my hope. But again, I go back to it's not just dollars and cents for what's in the garden. You're exactly right. You have to consider the other things. I was doing the math. I had to try to figure it out. My main appliances, refrigerator, um, stove, dishwasher, microwave, dryer, and washer, which people normally call a washer and dryer. They're all more than 15 years old. My washer and dryer, I think, are like 20 years old. Now, I say all of that to say, I know that they're ticking time bomb. Like, I know that it's coming, right? And so, what I think about is, can you save money with gardening? I am always thinking about today, what am I able to save? Because they're gonna be expenses tomorrow, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, right? Um, and it's the whole experience of what I'm paying for, what costs what. There definitely is some direct garden related expenses, so not just the act of growing a tomato, but all the infrastructure around it and what I choose to invest in as it relates to what my garden looks like and how it functions. I do definitely believe that for most people, it can save you money. I do think that you can go into the red if you are in the Maseratis of gardens, right?
Yeah. Well, we've
And
talked about the
so
$100 tomato a lot.
Yeah, I look at this and say, like, a forward focus garden can absolutely,
Yeah.
produce food, and you can be in the black, and you can save money, and you can continue to save money. And this is where I think preference comes in, right? Like, I look at the money that I spent over the first year or two of my garden, which was next to nothing. Then I look at the money that I spent when I really dug in, quite literally, figuratively and literally, and when I started expanding. And so it's almost like the rebirth of my garden. And the money that I've spent around that, like, I try not to even look at the spreadsheet where I calculate that.
Yeah.
Right. But I know that it's almost like the investment in my garden is almost like the investment in perennial plants. I know that it's not going to bear the exact return on my investment in year one or year two, but it will give me a return on that investment. I believe it firmly.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny we're having this conversation. And well, actually, it's not funny because we decided to talk about it and then we are. But before we got on here, I didn't, when you called me and I was like, I'm planting, I'll be right there. I was having the most fun I've had in probably the past 10 years in my garden.
Oh, wow.
Um, I got my pond done and I started a crap ton of flower seeds this year. And I have so many to work with that I'm not constrained to design it my way. But I started looking at it. I just got like a small corner of it done.
Mhm.
And I step back and I look at it and I'm like, dude, that cost me like $6 in seeds. I'm like, that's like $80 in plants right in this one little corner. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so this is part of what we're talking about. Um, I did a video last year. So I'm mentoring this young lady with bees. So shout out Rebecca if you're listening. And she's a gardener as well. But we got to a point. You all right?
Hey, Rebecca.
Oh,
Good grief.
no. You don't need to. No, I'm joking. So
Absolutely, I do.
we
She
were
makes me
doing
happy.
we were doing a thing and I needed some newspaper, right? Well, who's got newspaper, right? So for all the beekeepers out there, we thought she had a laying worker and we were separating the two pieces of hives with newspaper. She's like, I got newspaper. So she ran inside and she's like, here. She has like 20 different papers of 20 of the same paper from September 11th, 2001,
Oh,
right?
wow.
From 9/11. So I was like, well, I don't want to take this. It's like keepsake. And she's like, nah, take it. Well, lo and behold, the ad section fell out for Winn Dixie, I believe it was.
Mhm.
So I thought I was going to be real smart. And I was like, I didn't even really look at it. And so I sat down and I said, I'm going to do a video and we're just going to talk about the prices and whatnot. And I was very, very surprised as that video went through that the prices in the past, what is it now, 22 years? Everybody now you can feel old. It's okay. Um, no, yeah,
23 years?
23
23?
years. You never do math in public. They hadn't changed all that much for produce. Like I was just focusing on produce. I wasn't looking at
Mhm.
anything else. Now, those were sales, so do keep that in mind. They were obviously cheaper than normal, but it wasn't insanely like I had expected. But
Mhm.
then I go to the store and I'm like, well, maybe I'm just off because I actually went to the store after that because I was like, well, I don't go to the grocery store a lot. We grow so much of our produce, we're kind of out of touch with that. And so I
Mhm.
went and lo and behold, it was higher, but it wasn't like jaw dropping. You know what I mean? Now, the cost of food and everything and inflation, you have to factor in meats, you have to factor in all the packaged foods, all that stuff too. We're just talking about produce here, and if you want to eliminate packaged foods, then you're going to go even farther in multiple aspects in life. But I asked my wife in the same time frame, "Hey, do you think that the garden's saving money?" And she was, because I'd asked her the year before or maybe 2 years before, and she was like, "Not really," which was soul crushing to me. You know what I mean? And then she was
Mhm.
like, "Well, how many cabbages do you have out there?" And I was like, "Well, we got like 15." She's like, "Yeah, because they're like $4 or $5 a head. So right there, it started to click. You know what I mean? Like I started seeing
Mhm.
like, yeah, we're saving a little bit of money here. So what we started to do is we started to tailor our planting plan to more expensive foods. So we I started doing that a little bit more and planting more of certain things and less of others and whatnot. So there's all these different things that we can do, but when it comes down to it, if you go about it in the wrong direction, you're not going to be saving any money at all. You're going to be going backwards. Now, the argument is always, well, it's healthier, this, that, and the other, but we're not talking about that today, okay? We're talking about the simple cost of it.
Yeah. So I do want to take a small break to acknowledge that so we can put it in a box for this episode and then talk about the core tenets of the episode. And I'm going to have to ask Leonard. I think we pulled it down. There is a clip from many moons ago, years ago, different hair color, different hair length, look, different full body version of Batavia. Like this is some years back that you and I talked about how the garden can be healing. And it was in a moment where I was working through some grief and I was able to reflect back on kind of what the garden gave to me in that particular point in my life. And like I look at that and say, that's not what the garden is for everyone. And that's not what the garden is all the time for me. But that's important, right? So one year where I may end up, let's say $1,000. That's going to be the savings. Let's just use a round number. I saved $1,000 last year in my garden. And this year I end up saving 800. Like, is that a fail? Did the garden help me in other ways this year that can offset that? Like that's the piece that again, I'm going to put it in a box. I'm going to fight the urge to continue to come back to that because that's critically important to me. And I'm going to focus in on the actual dollars and cents of it because that's what we agreed to talk about. Leonard kicking and screaming. And that's all we really agreed to talk about. I think that
Well, hold on. Let's talk about that for a second.
if I do, you know what's going to
You're
happen.
going to cry?
Yeah.
No, don't cry. Don't cry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think, this is such a broad topic. It's really hard.
Mhm.
And I agree with you. We really do want to focus on like the actual dollar and cents of what's coming out of the garden. But if we get a little creative here, just a little creative, and we say, okay, we're spending time in the garden, then guess what we're not doing when we're spending time in the garden working? We're not spending any money anywhere else. You're not
Mhm.
going to the mall. You're not going
Mhm.
shopping for,
Mhm.
the new whatever. I don't know, new Jordans or whatever. You're focusing on that. You're improving your health.
Mhm.
Possibly, if you're taking and you're eating the healthy food, that health cost could potentially come down. So
Mhm.
I want to be very clear about this though. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're going to get healthier by working in the garden. There's a lot of factors that you got to meet, but that could possibly be one of the positive outcomes of it. So across the board, there's a lot of things that can help lower your overall costs.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then if you get to the dollar and cents of it, all right, back
Before
to
we get
you.
to the dollars and cents of it, one more comment around satisfaction. So you oftentimes tell the stories around like when you all look at your dinner plates, your family looks at your dinner plates, and how so much of it is made up from what you've harvested from the garden. And you tell the story in the dollars and cents savings. I look at this story and say the satisfaction from what you've been able to provide for your family. I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless
Not
you.
cry. Not yet. If I'm teary eyed, it's because of the sneezing. That's the way I hear it. And I know you well enough to know if you went to the grocery store to buy those things and here you are serving it up to your family, the sense of pride that you tell that story with is not the same. And I think that again, we oftentimes underestimate the kind of the non what's the term? The non the tactile pieces of it. Like you can't feel the dollar, the cents, right? Like, but there's still dissatisfaction. And now I'm willing to move forward. Don't pull me back in.
Yeah, I mean, there is there's absolutely a satisfaction of like this is what we've produced, and it's a lesson for my son, so he can kind of get a grasp on it.
Hmm.
But in the past year, it's been like that feeling is 90% of like, hey, this meal cost us $3 for the whole family to
Hmm.
eat. Just so you know, like that's what it went in financially into this. Because then we'll go to a restaurant and it's like $70 for a meal or something stupid like that. And we're like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like we've
Well,
literally,
you have to fold in the experience. So that's what a lot of people are willing to spend money on. Now let me tell you something else though. There's something to be said about things that are overpriced. Period. No matter what your sales paper has as the price point, when you think about the cost of that head of cabbage to you in your garden, like I'm not going to use the word cheap, but we can eat really well for far less than what most, I'd say, Americans are going to spend to bring food into their house. Now, that in my mind, dollars and cents, that's all I'm talking about. Like the take a 10-year period over your garden, because that allows kind of for things that upfront cost to level out. If you're consistently gardening, even if you have the same footprint, you are going to, in my view, spend less money, dollars and cents, on this kind of produce than you would if you were going to the store. And arguably, even if you spent the exact same money, we know that you'd get less if you're spending the exact same money at the store compared to what you spend on your garden. Very
yeah.
clearly.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny in the beginning of the episode, you talked about your first garden and how there wasn't much of an investment.
Mhm.
But then the investment went up, right? And so that's what
Yeah,
that's what we need to talk about now because
yeah.
I think across the board, and we've often said on this show like you can get into gardening rather affordable, right?
Affordably, yeah.
Affordably, I mean whatever, my English isn't great. It is my first language, I do promise. But if you think about that and it's like I just told you about my drip system I put in, like that was a tough pill to
Mhm,
swallow.
mhm.
And I sat back and I analyzed it for probably close to 2 months, 60 days, and really thought about like what are the financial benefits of doing this? Like how am I, my garden, my family going to financially come out on top for this project that we're going to do? And I remember, do you remember when I re- I think it was like 2021. I had to replace the wood around my bed, all
Mhm,
my
mhm,
beds, and man, I mean that was like $300. And then
mhm,
I
mhm,
added more, and so that was another
mhm,
roughly $300. I'm like, geez, So the first year I did it, I used untreated wood, and it rotted, just basically rotted the day I put it in. And so once we got through, and I ran it until I couldn't run it anymore, and
mhm.
then we
Yeah.
replaced it. But as those costs add up, a number of things were occurring at the exact same time. So, yes, I did spend that money on the garden and I do continuously spend money on that garden, but at the same time, my knowledge is expanding. I'm learning more. And
Mhm,
not only am I doing that, but now I'm getting to the point where I'm able to produce bigger harvests off of smaller crops, smaller space. So
mhm.
I'm getting more efficient in my gardening now. So that's like my one of my overarching goals that I don't ever really say in our goals episode, but like efficiency is king. And that can mean a lot of things. It can be producing a bigger head of cabbage. I mean, look, y'all, if you were here for the 18th century doorknob era, we're up to 20th century now. So, we're
Just
going
barely.
in the
No, I'm
right
joking.
direction. Yeah. No. But and it's like my Brussels sprouts, right? So my
Mhm.
Brussels sprouts have been fail, 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 fail. Each fail is a year, then win, and then this year, Papa Bear's got some big ass Brussels sprouts. So now I'm starting to figure that out, right? So we're starting to kind of it snowballs, and so yeah, we did put money in there, but we also sat back, and looked at it from a budget, and I set strict limits across the board on everything, and it's all helped out. So that drip system helped out because I got healthier plants, I got bigger plants, more
Mhm.
efficient fertilizing, and there's probably another benefit I don't know about, but all of those and probably a lower water bill. I mean, look, I saw a hell of a savings when I fixed my toilet finally that was leaking for a couple of years. $40 a month I saved. What?
Mm.
So, all of that stuff kind of adds up minus the toilet. But you start putting all that in and you start to see the overarching picture. And we are going to have to bring up the $100 tomato because it's a true thing that occurs. And there's a way to beat all of that. And we just have to figure that out. And then your savings will start to go up more and more and more.
See, I think we have to be honest in this dialogue because not only is there the $100 tomato, there's also the hard cost of mistakes,
Yeah.
right? And in many cases, I learn from the mistake, and so I'm able kinda to justify whatever that hard cost was. Um, but in some cases, you are literally costing yourself money based on, kind of knowing better but still doing the wrong thing, based on not investigating and or researching. Like these are things that I believe that if everyone tracked dollar for dollar what they spent for their gardens compared to the things they harvest from their gardens and estimating what that is valued at, I believe that we'd make smarter decisions around our gardens, right? But while that's happening in some places, I'd probably say the majority of us don't. When you think about that $300 and that $300, I'm like, $300, that's big money. You say year one, year two, I look at this and say, well, shoot, how many times have I replaced this? I look at something like the cage baby is a great example of it's, and I was trying to track back to how much I paid for that and maybe, maybe past Batavia is protecting future Batavia's memory from that. I can't quite put my finger on it. I have a roundabout estimate, but that was for the goal of growing tomatoes all the time. And I've since moved on from that. Still have, obviously, it's still the same planting space, so I still have use for it. But would I consider that a mistake? No. But would I consider that an expense that was required for my garden? No. Like I have to work my butt off when it comes to collards and peppers and tomatoes to pay off that investment,
Yeah.
again, if we're focused on dollars and cents, right? And so I wouldn't trade the cage baby in for anything in the
Well,
world,
I
in the
mean,
garden world. But I think we have to consider all of that, and that kind of goes back to your goal, right? And how strongly you feel about being in the red versus being in the black when it comes to your finances around the garden. And that helps dictate where you're going to head.
I think I remember the cost of the cage baby, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want to display your finances out there. Um,
Well, that was all borrowed money back then.
but I mean, if you think about it though, and I mean, really look into it, like you bought the cage baby. Um, yeah, you had it built, and you had a plan for it. The plan did not work out quite like you wanted. Is that safe to say? I'm not trying to
Yeah, and
rehash anything, and we can just leave it at that.
no, for context for the people that weren't around, this is before I gave in to the concept of crop rotation. And the reality is I could plant tomato plants there for another 10 years straight and may not have issues, but that's just not the way that I've decided to garden.
Right.
So I had a tragic year of a lot of sickness in my tomato plants in the cage baby in 22. And without like 100% evidence, just intuition and experience, it felt like that garden soil needed a break from growing that particular type of crop. And I have since had success over those off tomato years. Ironically, though, we're returning to tomatoes. So, let's hope we're not foreshadowing any tragedies again this year.
Well, I
There will
mean,
be tomatoes in the cage, baby.
this is how you learn, right? But what I was getting at is that you have that space, but then you turn it into, here's the key word here, multi-use space. Okay.
Mhm.
So I have a general rule in my garden. I don't use it or buy it unless I can get multiple uses out of it. And you can put that in any perspective you want, any terms. You know, I can use a shovel to dig soil and I can use it to hammer a nail. You know, something as easy as that. Or I can build a cage, baby, to grow tomatoes and then use it to protect all of my other crops that need to be protected from squirrels and all that other stuff.
Mhm.
So, across the board, like that's what I try and do in my garden. And that's been a really big money saving venture. So I brought up the pond. We built the pond. That was money. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Labor intensive, but financially it wasn't as bad. But there's a purpose behind that. And so we have bees and we plan to grow to help feed the bees so we can get more honey so we can make more money. So, there's all of that. And the water will provided for them will help them to cool the hives and all that stuff. But, you know, it's a multi-use situation here. We get to enjoy it, obviously, but then we've planned this thing out to benefit us in another way. And
Mhm.
so, when you get down to it, there's a lot of things that you can do to set yourself up to save money in your garden. And really what that comes down to, and when you break it down to the core of the onion, excuse me, it's all about you save money in the garden, you save money in the food bill. End of story. I mean, that's how it works. So if we look at it that way, what are a few ways that we know, Batavia, you and I both know from experience, from experience, that will absolutely save money in the garden? Like, what are those key points?
My first contribution is going to be bulk purchases.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
So,
If you're
so
purchasing for new spaces or topping off your bed, soil is a really good example. Depending on what you're building for your garden, compost could be an example. A third example could be mulch, depending on again on what you're using.
yeah,
Um, the bulk buy is not a trap. Like that's a real thing.
yeah, absolutely. You buy in bulk, you get a cheaper price. First of all,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I mean you can take this and break it down to whatever level you want, but and then you spend less time going to the store. You don't go to the store.
Mhm.
You don't spend the gas. You don't
Mhm.
walk in the store. You don't buy anything else. So like
Yep.
I buy all my fertilizers in the wintertime. They're usually on sale, and buying things on sale is obviously part of it, but I have all of my fertilizer for the entire year plus to get me
Mhm.
through, and I get it cheaper. I mean, I looked in there, like I went in there one day and I had to buy, I don't know what I was doing. Oh, I was testing out a bag of soil. I wanted to see how it would do. So I bought like a small 1 pound bag. It was $9. Figured out I liked it, went back, bought a 30-pound bag for $23. You do the math. You know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
works out. So absolutely buy in bulk. My number one is, and it's not by nobody's surprise, it's starting your own seeds.
Mhm.
I mean, clear as day. There's no better way to save money in a garden because for the same price that you can buy, no, for half the price that you can buy one pepper plant, you can grow 50 pepper plants, you know? And if
So
you factor in the containers and the soil and stuff like that, then you can get, you know, a, a quarter of the cost of it. You know what I mean? Like if you really, and I know that's where you were going and you were excited to go there, but that's part of it too. Like you have to factor that in into all of this, you know, and so you can still come way, way ahead by starting your own seeds.
So I'm actually look at Mr. I know this is where you're going. I actually was going to go two places. One was there, but the other was even if you start basic direct sowing, right? So the only cost that you have there would be the cost of the seed, right? So immediately you're going to save money if you buy a package of seeds. Check us out. We got cucumber seeds and direct sow them compared to you buying a cucumber plant from the store, right? Then the second part of this is what you were trying to touch on in anticipation of my feedback is very similar to the startup cost of a garden, your garden layout, the infrastructure. There is a level of startup costs for starting seeds, and you will very likely not replace the shelving unit that you have young then, right? Like that's the thing that you'll be using. So year 2 and 3 and 4, it's paid for itself already, right? Again, that goes back to the attitude that you're taking when you're looking at this. You may decide that you don't have the space and or you don't want to spend the monies on starting things indoors. There is your favorite joke. There is the winter sewing method, right? Like people do that. People swear by it and they're successful with it, right? So there are ways. Again, you just have to stick with it long enough to figure out what's your way.
Yeah. And I mean, just to take a second to talk to the person out there who doesn't start their own seeds and is curious, um, direct sowing seeds, you know, direct sowing green beans, peas, squash, melons, all of these crops are, I mean, it's a great way to get started because if you can direct sow them in the ground, then you can sow them in a small pot next to your garden outside and start them that way. And that's a very good kicker. You go into, you mentioned my seed starting shelf. Um, when I purchased that and built it, you know, built it out. I've got videos on YouTube and stuff all about it. And I have another one. I've got some grow lights that a company wants me to review. So we're gonna get those, and hopefully I can get you guys a discount on it. But I thought real long and hard about that purchase as well because
Mhm.
again, it's weird, but it's another $300 setup. You know, by the time everything was said and done. But I looked at it and I said, well, what am I going to get out of this? You know, I could do something cheaper or something. And I looked at it and I said, well, the amount of seeds I can grow on it, you know, I mean, this year, I think we've started close to 1,000 seeds on the seed shelf right next to me. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see it in the corner. I mean, you can do the math at $4 a seed or a plant. That's $4,000 worth of seeds, and that's just a rough. You know, if you go across the board, roughly they're about $4 a piece. If you average it out, so I mean, and that's just in 1 year, and this is like the fourth year I've used this. You know, and that was only in the fall from during the winter into spring. That's how many seeds we started on it. So you can see, like, yeah, it absolutely starts to add up. And but again, it hurt to do that. And I know, and I'm not trying to sit here and be like, you just got to dig in your pockets and dig in the couch and get your change out and do all that, make it happen. You know, if you really cared, you'd do it. What I'm saying is, like, if you can do it, you should absolutely do it. But I am also, and the older I get, which is terrible that I'm getting older. I wish I was getting younger, kind of. I've realized too that setting it up right will set you up for success in the future because we go back to what Batavia was saying earlier about like the mistakes and stuff like that. Well, mistakes do cost you, but in the long term, just like with the garden, those mistakes will save you dramatically if you pay attention to it and you change it. You know, if
Mhm.
you're growing broccoli every spring and it bolts every spring and you keep doing the same thing, I I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy because you're not learning from your mistake. But if you do it and then you're like, man, I got to do something different, and then you start working on it and changing it and doing more and more. Like this year, I put all that urea in my garden, and I so close to smoked my whole broccoli bed. It
Mm.
all came back. Like I
Mhm.
took from my lesson, and I figured out what to do, and I've turned it around. You can go look on YouTube. The broccoli bed is stunning right now. I can't believe it's as good as it is. So you look at that and you say, that mess up in the long run is going to save us lots and lots of money,
Mhm.
and so we just keep moving in that right direction. But I think you got to be very cautious about what you purchase too. We've joked a lot, like how many times have you bought a plant and left it in the pot and it just died, like
Yeah.
that's something that you shouldn't be doing at all. That's like the number one way to save money right there. You buy it, you plant it. You know what I mean? Which,
Mhm.
have you gotten any better at that?
I'm much better at that.
Yeah. That's a,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a hard process
Well,
though.
a part of it is because I'm buying much less as well, so I buy more flower transplants than I do vegetable transplants now. So I just have less to be wasteful with. So there's that. Um there I probably I probably have more waste in the house plants that I can't resist from buying again, that I kill at least every other summer because I'm outside frolicking in the garden so much, where I end up neglecting my house plants. Like that's probably the bigger, drop in the bucket as it relates to waste and monies. Um, I have to. I'm beating this drum. I have to come back to, like, what's the bigger picture for you? Because I firmly believe that we learn from our mistakes. So I'm not saying for the garden to save you money, you have to, produce a error-free garden. No. Mm-mm. Someone commented, and if you've listened, this isn't my style. So if you don't and you feel a way about what I'm about to say, that is what it is. And if you listen to the show and you made this comment, hey, so someone commented recently on a video and they said, amazing. I hope I'm as good as you one day. I think it's actually a picture, maybe. Maybe it's a video. The video, interestingly enough, is like, a bunch of kale and collards sitting on top of like some snow, and it's kind of Pinterest worthy, right? It was the last harvest from that year. And my initial reply in my head, because that's what I normally do when I read a comment, even if I don't get to it right away, is you have to be comfortable with the stumble, right? Like, for that, if that's the thing, that's the goal, it took me a lot of seasons to stumble to get there, to make mistakes, to planting too late in the fall, to planting too early in the fall. And I'm okay with that. And those things cost me something. If you look back, I'd like to take your 1,000 plants and even drop it down to $1 a plant. That's $1,000,
Yeah.
right? Like if we do that simple math, that's $1,000, right? So I mean, I think that if we look at just the money you spent, you just set up your garden this year and you went with, raised beds or containers, generally speaking, you probably are going to invest more in that setup than you will in what you get from your garden this year. But wait to year two and wait to year three. And if you are doing some of the things that we've been talking about, you're growing, you're being more productive, you're take it away, young Ben.
Well, I was just, I was going to say, and I'm going to do some quick math on a calculator real quick. Um, this seed shelf at this point has cost me $60 a year, and since I purchased it. Um, Now, and this is why you try and get quality stuff that's going to last, because you cry
Mhm,
once, you buy once. It's a whole
mhm,
thing. And it's absolutely true. I mean, you run it as long as you can. You take your time and consider what you're doing before you embark on a project. And those money savings will come in, because I know, like, I hear it, I see it, between YouTube, the podcast, or social media. Like, I hear people talking about the prices of things and how hard it is, and I completely understand. And I'm going to say this is something that I've just recently come to grips with in the past couple months. If you want something and you have the money, go ahead and get it, because it ain't going to do nothing but go up in price. You know, these prices are not going to come down. I mean, you may see inflation ease a little bit, but I remember when Hurricane Katrina hit, I think it was 2007 maybe. I remember gas in my area went from $1 a gallon to $2.25 a gallon. And I was a mechanic at the time. I was fixing cars for a living. That's what I did. And nobody came in for like 2 weeks. We just sat there and watched TV every day. And we thought we were going to go out of business. Um, and I remember we were all joking. We're like, the prices will come down. The prices will come down. They never, ever came down. Never. They've continuously gone up since. And so the way I look at it is, I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second, is those things are just tests to see what we will put up with and what we will spend. And I have a feeling we're in that moment right now. I
Hmm.
believe that we are in that moment where we are being tested to see what we will spend our money on and how this inflation will add up. You know, when will it kind of stop? You know, there's a whole thing with shrinkflation as well, where you're paying the same price but you're getting less, right? I am in the opinion, Batavia, and I would be interested to hear yours in this moment. I think in the food industry right now, we are going to see a dramatic shift in the coming years. I don't know how many years, but in the coming years, where restaurants will be less and less and less because it is so unaffordable for a family to go out to eat, for the amounts of food that we're getting, stuff like that. I think it's going to be a dramatic shift that we're going to see. And I'm already hearing rumbles about Domino's maybe be having an issue, which is like
Hmm.
unheard of, you know. So we're
Hmm.
starting to see that, and it's getting priced out of our range. And I really do think that right now we're being tested. Luckily for me, I'll take the test. You know what I mean? Like, I'll sit on my money and I will do everything I can. And the place that hurts the most is your food bill, because that's a every week expense. And so if we can cut that back, we can. So everybody listening that has a garden right now, you are part of the solution, because if my weird ass theory is correct and we're being tested, every time you spend less at the store, you're telling them I ain't going to pay that price, and you're providing for your family. You're killing two birds with one stone, four or five. But I think you're part of the solution here. And again, this is
Yeah.
where the grow for change comes in.
Yeah. I think if so, I'm not sure that I agree. I haven't given it enough thought to really form an opinion. So I can't agree or disagree around, are we going to see less and less um, restaurants survive what we're all seeing happen as it relates to the price of goods, and then ultimately the price that they're paying, and then what people can afford to pay when they go to those restaurants. But I will say this, and this is gonna teeter on the less of the actual hard dollars and cents of it all. I will say quality can be viewed in a couple of different ways. I'm even putting the nutrition of the thing aside, because all broccoli isn't equal. All broccoli isn't as nutritious as the next load of broccoli, right? Um, I'm gonna say quality from the enjoyment perspective. The quality, and y'all know we talk about this. I buy tomatoes during the off season. I've not been able to break myself from it. It's a texture thing. It's exactly how I want to prepare most of my salads. And when I put tomatoes on a salad and I add whatever other fixing, some dressing, I'm fooled into I mean, I forget how bad the tomatoes are. If I'm preparing a salad and I start cutting again during the off season using store-bought tomatoes, and I just pop a tomato in my mouth, I'm like this close to being disgusted. Like, the quality of that thing, and tomatoes are probably the best example of something that's so extreme as far as taste, from homegrown to purchase at a store. Um, think about that. Think about not only is the dollar you're spending more on the thing you're purchasing, it doesn't taste nearly as good as it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? Like, that has to mean something to someone.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. So there's so much to this conversation, and I mean it's just about having a conversation about it too. I mean, it's not really accusing anybody, and we're not trying to sit here and say like, hey, if you're not growing all your food, you're messing everything up for everybody. Like that's not it. But when you look at your garden and you step back, just take a beat, as Batavia would say. It's her favorite, one of her favorite terms. That and beating on a drum, and use that moment to think like, how is this going to benefit me? Do I really need it? Do I really want it? Because truly, when it comes down to this podcast, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Batavia, but both of our individual platforms, our goal is for you to be able to be happy in your garden. And part of that is not going poor, growing your own food, you know? And remember this, and we've said this so many times, and we'll say it so many more times. Gardening is a marathon, and the cost savings is a marathon. Is there an upfront cost? Yes. But that garden, if you build it right and it lasts you 10 years, then take that cost and divide it up over 10 years, and you're going to see what that garden cost you. You know, that fertilizer that I spent $23 on is going to be $2 a month. You know, I can walk down the street and find $2 on the side of the road. Hell, I was riding my bike like a month ago and found $10 on the side of the road. That paid for all my fertilizer for the year and a couple packs of seeds. You know what I mean? So it's like all of these things kind of start to add up, and it's really important that we do that. So let's get to the question of the day because we're going long and I don't want to go too long. I'm not prepared for this right now, but in the next episode, I have updates about the planter app for you that we will give you. I got a whole list of updates that have just come out. So just get yourself the planter app. It's a sponsor of the show, and get yourself a discount on the lifetime memberships. And there's another one too, but again, I'm not prepared, but just check out the discount. It's really good. And we'll get into all of that because there's actually, I was surprised by how many updates were coming from it. So get the planner app. Our question is actually a very good one. Short but good. Patty says,
Hey, Patty.
we got the timing right.
Hello. Yeah.
Patty says, my carrots that I planted last summer are finally growing. Better late than never, I guess. Will they be any good? Yes.
Yes. So carrots are biennial. And so what I heard from Patty was she sowed the seeds. Like, if my answer is firmly yes, if those seeds sat, my answer is, if there was growth last year and then they went dormant and now there's continued growth because they may be preparing to bolt.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't eat the carrot though.
Well, yeah, that was my question. Very good question. My question is, why wouldn't they be good to eat? That would be my
You know,
question.
it's
Like, what's the fear? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, and I get it. You know, especially in Michigan, I would imagine it's plenty cold in Michigan. So,
Mhm.
you know, it's frozen bed and all that stuff. So I
Mhm.
just my curiosity is, what is the fear behind the carrots? But absolutely, and Batavia's right. They could be preparing to bolt, but you're gonna know if they bolt. They will
Mhm.
shoot up.
Mhm.
They will start to spread. And let me give you a
Yeah.
pro tip. I mean, this is a pro. When I say pro, I mean professional tip. Okay, don't save the seeds from your carrots. It ain't worth it.
Mm. Mhm.
I
Mhm.
tried to
Yeah.
save seeds and I couldn't figure out how to get the seed out. I planted the seeds, they didn't do anything. It was a total waste of time. So,
Yeah.
um,
Without knowing anything more about it, but knowing that she's from Michigan is super helpful because she's a garden neighbor. Hey, garden neighbor. Um, yeah, well, bordering states count as my garden neighbor, right? So she went through a, frozen soil, dormancy. I'm going to say that if they're of size now, go ahead and get to harvesting and enjoying. Like, it's a possibility that the carrot could be woody. I've had that happen from time to time. Um, and then if we get to the point of you're in May, I'd say you should be at the point of, like, harvesting them, because now you're gonna go into the heat of the carrots and, like, heat of the season in year 2. You just may be wasting your space for what a carrot that isn't as tasty. And that, again, ties to the act of the carrot's about to bolt. Obviously do a couple of test pulls, though, to make sure that there's no rotting there too. So there's that.
Yeah. I don't usually do this, Batavia, but I'm gonna have to say, don't do what Batavia said and finish growing them out and see.
Mm.
I mean, you know,
No, I wouldn't say that. That's why I didn't say that.
yeah.
I hear what you're saying, though.
I mean, the reason why I say that is like you've made it this far. You've got them in the ground. You got carrots to germinate, which are very difficult to do. Not difficult, but it takes a really long time, and it can be very frustrating. And so you've got like, I mean, I don't know, Batavia. Other than thinning, would you say it's like 90% of the work is already done? So
Yeah. Yeah.
at this point, I feel like it's better just depending on how many you have, like Batavia said, do a test pull. But what I would do is if I pulled a test pull and they were good, I'd run it. But if it was a little bit questionable still, I might pull a portion out and leave a small patch there, because what you're going to learn from that is I can plant them in the summer and grow them through the winter and not have to worry about it. Or I shouldn't do that at all and just plant them in the spring, and
And
this is,
successfully overwinter carrots becomes the garden experiment, which y'all know I love.
yeah. And I mean,
I
that's
think
how
I'm
I live my gardening life.
Yeah, I think I'm giving the advice I'm giving with kind of making some assumptions that I know what's about to happen, which I could be clearly wrong. Because again, I don't even know if the carrots had started to form, which again, I suspect they did last year, or if these are just forgotten about seeds that were outplanted in the garden and now they're coming up,
We'll see. And
which I think
that's
is
the
pretty
key.
cool.
If
Yeah.
they hadn't germinated, then and they're just now germinating, they're not going to bolt.
Yeah, I'm out all of run
Yeah.
that. Like, it's just like you got out early and planted for spring, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of that kind of thing. So I mean, I'd love for you to share with us how this works out, because I'm kind of a little invested here.
Yeah. I mean, definitely give us an update. And if you do, so the comment came in on Backyard Gardens Community Garden Facebook page. Feel free to join.
Mm,
Um, and if you do do that, make sure you put like backyard garden or question of the day update, so we can catch it, because it gets kind of hard to find it. Um, but yeah, I got a question. I get this question fairly often. It's like, how did you learn how to grow like that? And this is exactly how I learned. I tried, I failed, I tried, and then I thought to myself, well, let me see what will happen. And then you just go from there. So that's how I did it. But so do what you want, but if they didn't bolt and they're not bolting, you should be good. And as far as them being dangerous, no danger. If it's woody, go ahead and eat it. If it's rotten, don't eat it.
yeah. So for the people that are going to be able to see and hear this, you're going to need to wrap up the episode. I am out of audio space.
Oh, are you done?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're not recording on audio
My card
anymore?
is full.
Nice. Okay. So with that being said, so all the people on YouTube, good for you. You get an extra few minutes.
Bonus.
We're talking about, or I'm thinking it's been a while since we've done crops that save money. So I think we should maybe come back with that in the near future. But yeah, so since we don't have no more audio, everybody have a fantastic day. Come support us where you can. And since you're on YouTube, thanks for being on YouTube. And everybody have a absolutely fantastic day. Since I've been monologuing this whole time and Batavia hasn't said any words, we're going to put this audio onto the audio portion. So everybody have an absolutely fantastic day. And in the words of Batavia, see ya. Ding.